They called him the Count of Saint Germain, a man whose life spanned centuries, a nobleman, an alchemist, a mystic. But there's more to his story than immortality. Hidden in his estates were treasures, rare artifacts, gold, jewels, and books filled with secrets of the occult. But legend says those who touched his treasures never lived to tell the tale. In the year 1754, the Count mysteriously disappeared from the world stage, but what he left behind became cursed. Noble families across Europe who were lucky, or rather unlucky, enough to acquire fragments of his vast treasure began dying under the strangest of circumstances. It started with sudden, inexplicable illnesses that baffled the best physicians. Then came the freak accidents, a carriage bolt shearing at the worst possible moment, a chandelier falling in an empty room, a slip on a dry marble floor. Some even vanished in the dead of night, leaving behind nothing but a cold bed and an open window. Whispers began to circulate in the dimly lit salons and back alleys of Paris and Vienna. They spoke of ghosts, of shadowy figures seen lurking in the halls of homes where the Count's artifacts were kept. Some claimed that gold from the Count's collection appeared to move on its own, disappearing from locked safes, only to be found years later in impossible places, tucked inside a dusty book, on a high shelf, or resting at the bottom of a dried-up well. The treasure, it seemed, had a will of its own, and that will was malevolent. Historians confirm that one collector, a wealthy merchant in Prague named Klaus Richter, became obsessed with the legend. He acquired a heavy iron-bound chest rumored to contain a diamond. The Count had never parted with the stone said to hold a fragment of the Count's own soul. Within days of bringing the chest home, his servants reported hearing faint, rhythmic chanting coming from within the locked container. They described it as a language they didn't understand, both beautiful and terrifying. Richter, driven by greed and curiosity, dismissed their fears. One night, he decided to open it. With trembling hands, he turned the key. The chanting stopped. He lifted the heavy lid. The diamond was gone. All that remained was a single black feather. By the next morning, Klaus Richter had vanished without a trace. Some say his ghost still wanders the cobblestone streets of Prague, eternally searching for the cursed jewel he so desperately coveted. Another tale, more chilling still, speaks of a small obsidian box, no bigger than a man's hand, covered in strange, unsettling symbols. It was found by a French duke who believed it contained the secret to the Count's alchemical knowledge. Those who dared to even touch the box reported a sudden, unnerving coldness, and those who opened it, they reported horrific visions. Faces twisted in agony flashed before their eyes. Laughter echoed in empty, silent rooms. Shadows in the corner of their vision would dart and move when no one was there. The box was eventually passed down through generations, each owner meeting a grim and untimely end. It was later found in the ruins of a burned-out mansion in the French countryside, locked tight, sitting perfectly preserved amidst the ashes. The caretaker who discovered it went stark raving mad within a week, muttering to anyone who would listen that the Count himself was inside the box, waiting. Locals in the villages surrounding the Count's former estates tell stories that even handling a single coin from the Count's treasure could invite death. One English aristocrat, a man of science and skepticism, acquired a medallion from Saint Germain's collection at an auction. He wanted to examine it to debunk the foolish superstitions. He reportedly died in his sleep that very night. His body was found cold and stiff, his face frozen in a mask of pure terror. The coroner could find no cause of death, but the servants whispered of what they found carved into his bedroom wall that morning. Crudely etched letters that spelled out the words, "Return me," or "Join them." No one had entered the room. The door had been locked from the inside. Over the centuries, many of these cursed artifacts eventually found their way into museums, locked away behind glass for the public to see. But the curse, it seems, did not care for security guards or display cases. Museum employees began to report strange occurrences in the wings where the Saint Germain collection was housed. Doors would lock on their own, trapping staff inside for hours. Lights would flicker and die without explanation. Unexplained cold spots would drift through the galleries, so cold you could feel your breath, even on a warm summer day. Some security guards, hardened men who had seen it all, swore they've seen fleeting silhouettes near the display cases at night. Tall, dark shadows that resembled the famous portraits of the Count himself, as if he were still guarding his treasures from beyond the grave. Investigators and historians who tried to document the items met with uncanny resistance. When they tried to photograph the artifacts, their cameras would mysteriously fail. Brand new batteries would drain in an instant, and on the rare occasions a photograph was successful, the developed film would be horribly distorted. Some images came back completely blackened, while others showed warped, nightmarish apparitions, smoky faces, and skeletal hands reaching out from the image as if trying to break free from the photograph itself. The evidence was always there, and yet it was never there. They say the Count of Saint Germain never truly died, and neither did his curse. Those who dare to possess his treasures, to disturb his eternal rest, may never escape his grasp. And now, a silence falls over the room. It's waiting, it's listening for the next person to dare and disturb his collection. And the silence speaks. The treasures stir. Eyes unseen watch every move. This is the moment when history, legend, and the paranormal collide. The curse continues. The cursed treasures traveled across Europe, a glittering trail of doom left in their wake. Families of noble blood, blinded by ambition and desperate for wealth and power, eagerly obtained them. They believed these artifacts would cement their legacies, but instead they sealed their fates. Misfortune struck with unnatural speed and ferocity. Sudden, inexplicable fires consumed their grand homes, leaving nothing but ash and whispers. Mysterious illnesses, baffling the most skilled physicians of the age, claimed the young and old alike. Fatal falls down grand staircases became chillingly common, as if an unseen force had pushed them. Rumors, spoken in hushed tones, in shadowed courtyards, claimed these deaths were not accidents at all. Servants and survivors spoke of fleeting shadows moving just before the tragedies, of whispered warnings carried on the wind, and of invisible hands tugging at the fine clothes of those who dared to possess the treasures. The artifacts, beautiful and deadly, seemed to demand a price paid in blood. One of the most infamous and chilling legends surrounds a silver chalice, exquisitely crafted and said to grant profound wisdom to anyone who drank from it. But this gift came with a terrible curse. For every secret the chalice revealed, it would claim a human life. The story tells of a respected scholar, a man of logic and reason, who, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge, dared to drink from it. Witnesses say he was immediately transformed. His eyes widened in terror, and he became possessed by an unseen, malevolent force. He fled from his study, from his home, and into the dark, tangled forest, screaming of disembodied voices, of lurking shadows, and of the Count's echoing, triumphant laughter. A search party was organized, but they scoured the woods for days without success. In the end, only the chalice was found, sitting eerily on a moss-covered stone. It was covered in a layer of frost, despite the mild weather, and stained with what could only be blood. Of the scholar, there was no sign. He had vanished, consumed by the curse. But the curse of Count Saint Germain isn't just physical. It's a psychological poison that seeps into the mind. Countless accounts from those who briefly held the treasures speak of tormenting nightmares. They described recurring visions of the Count's long pale fingers reaching out from the darkness. They saw the vacant, shining eyes of the long dead staring out at them from within treasure chests. They heard ethereal whispers in their sleep, a maddening blend of promises of untold power and threats of eternal suffering. Some collectors, even in the safety of their well-lit studies, confessed they could feel a palpable presence while examining the artifacts. They described a sudden, bone-chilling cold, the sensation of an icy hand resting on their shoulder, and a disembodied voice whispering directly into their ear. You will join us soon. The legends passed down through generations claim that the Count, a master of alchemy and the dark arts, performed forbidden rituals to bind his very soul to his vast collection of treasures. This unholy union made the objects extensions of his will, even after his supposed death. Those who were foolish enough to attempt to move or sell the items reported a terrifying series of events. Personal possessions would disappear from locked rooms, only to reappear in bizarre places. Important letters and documents would be found torn to shreds, as if by unseen claws. Most disturbingly, family members would fall gravely and suddenly ill, their sicknesses defying all medical explanation until the cursed object was removed from the home. Even seasoned paranormal investigators who tried to study these items were not immune. Many were said to have fainted upon contact or experienced vivid, terrifying hallucinations of torture, fire, and shadowy figures roaming their own homes, a psychic echo of the Count's dark past. Even today, in the modern world, collectors and historians speak in hushed, fearful tones of Saint Germain's artifacts. They say the treasures are more than just objects. They are alive, imbued with a malevolent consciousness. They are watching, and they are waiting, patiently, for their next victim. So if you ever find yourself in an old antique shop or a forgotten corner of a museum, and you see a gleaming gold medallion, a tarnished silver chalice, or an ornate jeweled box that is rumored to have once belonged to the Count, do not touch it, do not open it, turn and walk away. Some things were never meant for the living. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark before the curse finds you. The Count's treasures are scattered, but his curse is eternal. And perhaps, somewhere in the world, right at this very moment, someone is reaching for them.